everybody! So, we're doing another Facebook Live, and I have learned from previous Facebook Lives that it takes a little while for people to sign on and say hi and ask questions. So, I thought I would just start off by talking a little bit about what I'm going to do today and then get your questions, because you know I love questions. So let me see where to start. I'm doing this one ostensibly because Imprudence is currently out in trade paperback. I know it looks backwards to you, but there it is. And also because I just came off a book group discussion with an awesome crew of kids. And since I had to put on the makeup and everything anyway, I figured I would pop on and say hi to you guys all also. I love talking to school book groups. There's something about the enthusiasm of like genuine readers that's so wonderful. So, oh, there's Amanda. Hi, Amanda. All right. So what I thought I would do first, just to get us started and to give me something to talk about, so I wasn't just waffling, is talk a little bit about cover art. So I get that question a lot. I just got it, actually. So I know one of the things that happened with Imprudence's cover art is that a lot of people thought that this was going to be the last book in the series because the last book of the Parasol Protectorate series had a yellow cover, and the last book of the Manners and Mutiny series had a yellow cover. And so when Imprudence came out with a yellow cover, I think a lot of people thought it was going to be the last one. I should say that I did say something about that, but they really liked, considering that she's going to sort of Egypt and the sort of yellowness of the desert, I think they really wanted to emphasize that with this cover, so that's why they went yellow for that. But in case any of you don't know, Imprudence is not, in fact, the last book in the series. We've finally officially announced it. It was a long, complicated thing getting the next two books organized into contract, but there are going to be 2 more Custard Protocol books, and right now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end the series at that. So Custard Protocol will be 4 books in total. I'm pretty sure. I don't like to have to commit to anything. But yeah, so during the course of this particular video, I'm going to be giving away 5 copies of Imprudence, the new trade. So in the title for the video, you can see there's a link to a Google form where you can enter if you'd like to win a copy. Yeah, I'm just testing that out. There's going to be a code word, but I'm not going to give you the code word yet. But I will give you a code word a couple of times through the course of the video, and then you can go enter if you like. 1 entry per person, and enter from anywhere or anything. So yes, so back onto 2 more books. There are 2 more books in the custard. So this is number 2. This is not the final one. So yay! This is your opportunity to get all caught up and ready for the next one. The next book is going to be out in 2018, so not this year. I'm actually writing it right now, and I'm nowhere near done. So you're going to have a little bit of a wait for that. Production takes a long time with these kinds of books, so even if when I finish it, it then has to go through several edit passes and all that sort of thing. So it will be 2018. I don't have any kind of date for that. I'm sorry. It frankly rides on me finishing the manuscript and then us figuring out how much work it needs after that. So I can tell you that the next book is called Competence, and that it's gonna have a new main character as a point of view character, so it's still the same crew and everything, but the main character who is telling the story is going to be Primrose rather than Prudence. So Rue is there, of course, but Prim is talking about her, which has been really fun to write, actually. Primrose is great. And then I have a secondary point of view character, which I have not done with this series before, which is just to tell kind of the other side of some of the story, and that secondary character is Percy. So the twins are kind of taking over Competence, whether I like it or not. So yeah, I thought I'd talk a little bit more about cover art. So one of the things I get asked a lot is how much choice I have in the cover art, whether I'm helping to pick out the model, which sometimes I did. I got to help pick out the model for both the Parasol Protectorate series and the Finishing School series. I didn't get to pick out the model for these books, but I think Orba did a great job. I think she's a little, her hair was a little lighter than I had written Prudence, so I added in some descriptions of her hair that made it a little more golden. And then they gave her a little too much makeup for my taste, says the girl wearing a ton of makeup. But it's just that in Victorian times, you probably wouldn't have worn that much makeup unless you wore a light skirt. So that is the reason that barracks scene exists in Prudence, where Rue has to dress up as a lady of the night, as a courtesan, in order to break into the barracks in Prudence. I wrote that whole scene because of the cover art. So the cover art has influence over the books. And then I gave Quidel a fetish for makeup and sexy clothing, so that we could continue to explain the cover art from there on out. We'll see what Orbit does with Primrose as the new cover, and as the new main character. They've been told, but I might have to emphasize that they really should have a different model on the cover, although Rue is still kind of the star of the story, so they might still put her on the cover. I don't know. I don't have that much influence over my cover. So Karen says I need a redhead cover. To have a redhead cover, I would have to write a redhead main character, which I have not done. And it's not because I'm prejudiced against redheads. It's just that, how do I put this? It's just that redheads are really common in urban fantasy, particularly of the tramp stamp variety. And so I was kind of leery about writing a redheaded character until I don't know, until I guess it had established myself. Amanda wants to know if I see the cover art before the final edit. Yes, I see the cover art before they are finished with it. And I also see the cover art before I am finished with the book. And I don't know if that's common for authors, but I believe it has to do with the fact that I have unprecedented, at least influence over my covers, in terms of, like, they know I will try and write in a correction if it's necessary in the book. Anders wants to know if I'm going to Worldcon in Helsinki. Unfortunately, no, I'm not going to Helsinki this year. I for those of you who don't know, I love Worldcon. It's one of my favorite events to attend. I try to attend at least every other year, but I'm not going to make it to Helsinki this year, and that's because I'm going to be in Denmark already a couple months before. And I don't do more than one international travel a year. It takes too much out of me. And it just doesn't make sense for me to return to the same general area, Scandinavia, so quickly, one on top of another. I would have loved to have gone. I've never been to Helsinki, and I would have really loved to go, but it just didn't work out that way this year. I will I will absolutely, unequivocally, and definitely be in San Jose's Worldcon in 2018. Because I lobbied for that Worldcon. It is my local area. I cannot wait. I'm over the moon about it, and I'm going to wear every pair of shoes in my closet. So you will see me change shoes like 3 times a day. I'm so excited. I can't even get over it. Sally wants to know if there are redheaded Italians. There are blonde Italians in the north of Italy, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are some redheads in there. Redheads get around. Right, so that was our little cover art conversation. Shall we start out with some questions? I think we are, I wish Facebook Live told me how many minutes I'm in on a video, but there seem to be 25 of you watching, so I will tell you soon what the code word is. So yeah, any questions? I'm waiting for those. Yeah, Sally says dark hair for Italy. Yeah, we do tend to think that way. I mean, it's just genetic, right? Darker hair, the further south you go towards Sicily. Lighter hair, the further north you go towards what was Gaul. And frankly, those Vikings, they got everywhere, and they sure did like to impregnate people. Thank you, Amanda. About 10 minutes in. So in another 5 minutes or so, we'll give you the code word. I'm on my iPhone. It's the only thing that seems to... Whoa. Oh, stop. What are you doing? It's getting darker. Why is it getting darker? Shoot. What have I done? No. Bad. Bad iPhone. Okay, so I just did something that was bad. I'm on my iPhone. It's the only way I can figure out how to drop a Facebook Live. So what I should have is a watch. I don't own a watch anymore. Is it still there? Oh, I suck, you guys. I'm sorry. Yes, so Frankie, I clicked the screen and that was why it went dark. So clicking the screen is clearly not the way to go. It's also the reason that when I drop a Facebook Live, it's vertical rather than horizontal. I know horizontal is supposed to work better, but it doesn't want to do horizontal at all on my iPhone. So. Right. So yeah, let's just ignore my technical difficulties because frankly, I suck at technology in a big way. Big way. This is going to be a really tough year for me, you guys, because I need to upgrade basically everything. I need to upgrade my computer and my phone, and I'm going to be just like, oh. Helen wants to know where I find all of my amazing accessories. A lot of them come from Amazon. And Etsy, and occasionally I'll just make them myself. I'll like find something at Ross or TJ Maxx or whatever, and it's meant to be, I don't know, a clip-on for a dress or shoes or something, and I'll just change it out for a hair clip. I do that a lot. Oh, the red live box shows me my time. Look at that! That's awesome. Thank you guys. Yeah, who needs technology when you have tea and manners and hats? Exactly. Exactly. All right. Did I miss questions? I'm sorry, you guys. In previous Facebook Lives, going backwards and looking for the questions just seems to cause a problem. So I'm hoping I can get some of you guys to just re-ask questions. Will I be introducing, Gail wants to know if I'm introducing any new major characters. Yes, there will be a new major character who will probably be the point of view character for the last book in the Custard Protocol series. That character is the ship's doctor, and I know her name and what she looks like and how she fits into the universe, and yes, she fits into the universe, she's fantastic. I really, really love her. I can't wait to write her. So she's going to be the last book, which is Incompetence. Let's see, who will we see more of Teshret? Yes, you will be seeing a lot more of Teshret, because Primrose is the point of view character for Competence. So, you're in Scotland right now. Where should you go? I don't know why you would ever want to leave Scotland. Stay in Scotland. Don't go anywhere. Actually, Ireland, Dublin, is bidding in for 2019 or 2020, one of the two. So, which is not too far from Scotland. So you might be getting a Worldcon, at least in your area, in the not too distant future. So stay in Scotland. Why leave Scotland? Scotland's wonderful. I want to come to Scotland, actually. I hear rumors about like glamorous hiking across the Scottish Highlands, which is about what I could do, where you hike and then someone else shows up with a fabulous tent and then cooks meals for you. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to go hike the Highlands in a very, very civilized way. Taking the heroines to other parts of the world, what unusual characters might there be in a place like or like Australia? I have not thought about Australia, although I wouldn't rule it out. But yes, so we went to parts of Africa in Imprudence, and next up, I believe, I haven't written it yet, so this is very hedgy, we're going to Peru. So we're finally visiting the other continent. The New World. Melinda's just started listening to the Quartet of Short Stories audiobooks and loves marine biology. Did I have interactions with the cast? Yes. Yes, I did, with many of those. So a handful of the people playing the various voices. So my short story collection is a full cast short story collection with a musical score done by Artistic Whispers Productions. And full cast means it's read exactly how it's written, but that the dialogue is done by different voice actors. And I know a lot of those voice actors. A lot of them come out of podcasting. A handful of them are actually my personal friends. Vanessa, I think, does Fairy Debt. I think she might be she might play cops or be the narrator. She was my assistant at the time. So yeah, I was definitely intimately involved in the full cast audio. Amanda wants to know if I have any thoughts on my next series. Well, since Custard Protocol is going to take me into 2019, I haven't really thought about it all that closely. I have the start of a new urban fantasy series that's coming out in July, and I might write another one in that, depending on how well that book is received. I really love that book. It's the spin-off of Marine Biology, and it was a joy to write. Possibly because it was something different, or possibly because I really just like writing a modern setting for a change. And then I also have another idea for a young adult series, which is also not in Parasolvers. But don't worry, I'm not dropping the Parasolvers. There are so many novellas and shorts and things that I want to write in this universe as well. So I'll keep them all up, but there is a good chance that if I decide to do another longer running series, it will be a young adult series, and it will be not set in the Parasolvers. So, Amy would like to know if there's a difference between the trade copy and those sold to the public. So the trade copy is sold to the public. It's on sale now. There might be some corrections in the trade edition as opposed to the hardback edition. So you guys got Imprudence in hardback first, and now it's out in trade to the US. So the UK got a trade, a slightly smaller than trade, what they call B4 edition initially. They don't do hard copies of my books in the UK. So what might, there were a bunch of typos and other issues with the first edition of Imprudence, for which I apologize, although it was not my fault. And those I think have been fixed for the trade. So you get frankly, a cleaner copy with the trade edition. There is a difference between the trade edition in the US and in the UK. So all of the editions are anglicized, so all of the Custard Protocol books are British in spelling and grammar and stuff. But the UK edition uses the word ladybird, and the US edition uses the word ladybug. That is the only real significance difference between the two. 15 minutes. Okay, so I am going to give you guys the code word for entering. So I'm giving away 5 copies of Imprudence and the trade edition, the new one. And you can go follow the link that's in the description of the video to the Google Doc and put in the code word tea, as in tea that you drink. That's your code word. And I'll repeat it again in a little bit for people who tune in later. Jocelyn likes point of view of Alexia's father, Alessandro, which is the werewolf that wasn't. So Alessandro is a really, really fun character to write. He's an anti-hero, so kind of a douche, shall we say. Yeah, propping the video up makes it dark. I'm sorry, you guys. Backlighting. Hold on a second. I'm going to try turning on the lights. All right, is that better? No, still dark. This is California for you guys. It's raining outside, so it's dark outside, so nothing works. So I can either hold it and have the video wobble slightly, or I can either prop it and have it be slightly too dark. What design are my earrings? My earrings are just sort of a squiggly kind of fleur-de-lis design. They're shell. They're really lightweight. I love them, but I cannot wear a scarf because it gets caught on them. It's very irritating. Oh, right, Alessandro. We were talking about Alessandro. I would love to write more Alessandro short stories. He's really fun to write. Being an anti-hero, he's also really hard to write. And also I know a lot of his life because I had to write it out for the Parasol Protectorate. So you may get more Alessandro. But then again, I have a bazillion stories I want to write. So, hello to everybody who is catching me live for the very first time. That is super exciting. Amanda says trade equals softback. Yes. Is that the correct word in England? I'm never sure. Is trade bigger than a normal softback? Oh, the great question of trade. Trade books come in so many different sizes. It is crazy. In the UK, it is standardized to B4, which is a metric size, which is slightly smaller than most of the trade paperbacks that are produced in the US after a book has come out in hardback. How's that for confusing? Because if a book comes out in hardback, you don't have to reset the print for its trade because they're very similar in size. So they use a slightly bigger size for it in the US when that's been the system when it had previously come out in hardback. If it didn't previously come out in hardback, sometimes they'll use a smaller trade size. It's really pretty arbitrary and extremely annoying because none of the books are uniform on the shelf. So frustrating. Anyway. Gail says, thank you for the anglicized editions. You guys, I had to fight for anglicization like you wouldn't believe. So it was no problem whatsoever to get the finishing school books anglicized. Young adult, different from adult, different publishing houses, different branches of publishing. Apparently if I wave my hands around and touch my face, the light gets better. You know what? Next time I'm going to set up like a spotlight so it's right on my face. How's that? For now, I'm just going to lift the frickin' thing up. The anglicized editions I had to really fight for, and the end agreement was that they would all be anglicized except for the one word, which was ladybug, because Americans cannot process ladybird and the Brits cannot process a ladybug. So it had to be, that was the only thing that had to be changed in the two book editions. It's really hard to get anglicized. I got a lot of complaint letters because the Parasol Protectorates were not anglicized. But you guys, it's a pain. And I am, as a result of this, I'm contractually obliged to get my book copy edits in on time as quickly as possible so that everything can be anglicized. Because I don't actually write anglicized. I write a weird bastardized version of the English language where half the time I'm British and the other half the time I'm not British, because that's how I was raised. Yeah, Frankie says to click the screen to get the contrast. Ooh. And it will, ooh, that's crazy. Now I'm pink. Says to click the screen to get contrast and then it will be better. But that seems to make it darker every time I click the screen. Where are the other live things? Anders wants to know. The videos are all on my author page. You can see previous lives. Unfortunately, the internet isn't always great in my office, so sometimes the lives kind of stop. People are saying they love my books. Thanks, everybody. And then there's mass market paperback. Yeah, back to our discussions of book editions. My publishing house no longer does mass market. So my first books actually came out as mass market, which is my favorite size. I happen to really love the mass market. But they've discontinued making them at all. So the mass market editions of the Parasol Protectorate series are out of print, and so collector's items. So if you have those, hold on to them. Yeah, because nobody does, very few companies do mass market anymore. Yeah, I don't, there's complicated reasons why, which aren't very interesting. William is watching live from Scotland. Yeah! Hooray! Mara wants to know if I can tell a little bit more about my potential YA series. No, I'm not going to. I think it's brilliant and ingenious and hilarious, of course. It has to do with, I just said no and then I'm about to start talking about it. But it's so far in the future and I'm just not sure if I really want to write it, that I kind of don't want to talk about it until it feels more like a thing. I'm really wary of like making promises that I don't feel like I can keep. So we'll leave it at that for now. If you want to track me down at a convention sometime, maybe I'll be a little bit more loosey-goosey. Finland! Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love seeing people from all over the world watching the Facebook, and Belgium. Hooray! Wow, I guess if I do it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday, I get a whole new audience. That's pretty cool. John wants to know what method of purchasing my books gives the most money to me. So with my traditionally published books, so those are my serieses, like these guys, it really does not make a very big difference how you buy them. I pretty much get about the same amount no matter what. So you can buy them electronically if your preference is to read that way. I will say that the most support you can give any author that you love is to buy their books as soon as possible. So as soon as they come out, within the first week of release, that really helps. That helps us. Because that's the time when we catch the publisher's attention and when they kind of make the decision whether we're worth it as authors. So you really want to buy as soon as possible if you want to support the author. And then the other thing is to write a review. Like, I know everybody says this, but it's honestly true. Reviews have such a huge impact on whether an author gets published again by a company, whether we get like any kind of attention from Goodreads or Amazon. The number of reviews have to do with whether you can get certain advertising for promoting your next book. Like, the reviews are really significant. So, so far as the most money, yeah, the review is more important. Buying it early and writing a review is more important than what means you buy the book. Yeah. Italy. Yeah, pre-ordering is another really big deal. If the book is offered for pre-order, and all of mine always are, that's also really big because it allows the publishing house and the author to know how many to print ahead of time. And that saves everybody having to deal with books being remaindered or discarded or returned. When I say review, yes, I mean like customer feedback on Amazon or Goodreads or Audible, or all of them. Preferably. Just copy and paste the same review. Or iTunes if it's an audiobook. Yeah, that's what I say by review. Writing it on a blog is really good too. But yeah, and it's the sheer quantity of them as well as the star rating. Sally says she didn't know that about pre-sales. Yeah, pre-ordering a book is really good for everybody because you have at least a sort of guarantee to know how many books to print and how much is coming up and how many downloads you're going to have. Yeah. And it can also be the case that the publishing house doesn't know that a book is getting a lot of attention, and then they start to see the pre-orders, and so then it's like a self-fulfilling thing, so they'll start to throw a little bit more advertisement around a newer book or a newer author because they see that those pre-orders are happening. So yeah, very, very useful for everybody. William would like to know if there are going to be hardback editions that are like the Soulless super fancy one. Let me take you guys over there. In case you care, here's Here's what stacks of my books look like. Stacks of books, stacks and stacks of books. They just sit on my office floor. But this one, dun dun dun. So that was a Subterranean special edition. Thank you to everybody who bought it. It's sold out now. So you may be able to get a few online in certain places, but it's basically sold out. We did a limited print run, and it was always going to be a limited print run. I love that edition so much. I think I wrote a little, I wrote a blog post about this. If you want the specific details, you can Google Gail Carriger Subterranean Special Edition Soulless, and the blog post will come up. But essentially the hardback rights for the Parasol Protectorate series are owned by Orbit. So in order to get them to do hardback editions, they need to sell those rights to Subterranean. And that's a really, really challenging thing to do. So I really would love the rest of the books to be made into hardbacks. I think it would be so beautiful and so much fun. But there's no movement on that front at the moment, is pretty much all I can say. But I would be in favor of it if we could make it happen. Do you have something available for pre-order right now? Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. I don't have anything on pre-order. So the other interesting thing about pre-orders is all of the different places where you can put things up on pre-order, international or United States, like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Apple, etc. They only allow you to do it for a maximum of about 90 days. So there's no point in putting anything up for pre-order until about 2 months before it releases. And there's been some problems with some of those companies shipping the pre-ordered version, which is sometimes a placeholder, so it's like a draft version, rather than the latest updated version. So I am pretty nervous about putting anything up for pre-order unless it's like really near the end stages of being ready to be done. And of course you need to have cover art done and all of these other things. So 2 months out is not a bad requirement. So yeah, I don't have anything releasing until July, and I haven't even announced the title of that book or anything yet. In conjunction with the Google Doc Enter to Win copies of Imprudence, I'm telling you your code word again, which is tea. Yay! Tea, as in the tea you sip, because it's my favorite thing in the world. And we're halfway into the live. Andrew says all the books are for sale, even the Mummy book. Yes, the Mummy book, which just came out. I think it's also out today. Hooray! Right. Any other questions? We're about half an hour in, so I can end at any time. John would like to know, will we ever meet a witch to go with ghosts, werewolves, vampires, and souls? So one of the conceits of the Parasolverse is that there are no human magical practitioners. So in other words, you're either an immortal creature or you're a ghost or you're not. The idea of magic essentially does not exist. So I took out the occult and all those sorts of things. There's either ether reacts with you and you are an immortal creature or you're not. So you will never meet a witch in the Parasolverse, but you might meet other blood-sucking immortal creatures or the like, and you might meet more shape-shifting immortal creatures and the like. What's my favorite kind of tea? I drink English breakfast tea almost exclusively. I like a tea blend called 1706 Strong from Twinings. That's my preferred tea. The AB drinks Builder's tea, which is a little bit too strong even for me. And what do I eat with it? I am a tart person, like pies and things. I like fruit and pastry. I like puff pastry a lot, and I like a little bit of chewiness. I'm not a shortbread or like a crispy cookie girl at all, or biscuits. I don't like those at all. And I disagree strongly with dipping anything into your tea, because then you just end up with crummy tea. So English breakfast. I had English breakfast tea with a crumpet today for lunch, and that was a thing of beauty. My crumpet had lemon curd on it. I can highly recommend this combination. So I think that would be my ideal pairing. William wants to know if I've thought of working with an illustrator like Victorian novelists did. Yes, I'd really love an edition like that. And I'm hoping maybe to bring out something like that in the future. I also fought really hard for a coloring book for the series, like an adult coloring book, and I might still do something like that, maybe a parasol verse one. It's not something that most publishers are hugely excited about, frankly. It's just not a super popular thing to do anymore. I don't know why, but I do. I love it. How would Lord Akalama feel about revisiting Greece? Well, good question. I don't think he'd like it very much. He might. Yeah, I don't think so. Currently, I hadn't even thought about taking her to Greece. How did I get the idea to treat the historical idea of ether as if it were real? So that's kind of what I did. So I took a lot of, when I was creating the universe, I took a lot of wild and crazy scientific theories like the counterbalance theorem or the theory of an etheric sphere, and just made them exist in reality for my books. Just the way I took the mythological idea of vampires and werewolves as they existed in Gothic lit and made it real in my books. So it was the same kind of approach. I don't know how I came up with that idea. I just thought it would be fun. I guess from a thought experiment standpoint, I was hypothesizing if you had immortals in the Victorian world, how would the scientists react to it? And I was like, well, the scientists would try to explain them using the theories of the day. And so what if the world worked in accordance with those theories? And that's how the explanations were. Am I reading anything at the moment besides Black Dog Blues? For those of you who aren't in my book group, I chose a really fun urban fantasy called Black Dog Blues by Rice Ford for our read-along. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying it. It's a bit violent, but it's really, I really loved it. It's been a long time since I found an urban fantasy that I liked as much as I liked the super early urban fantasies like Nights of Ghosts and Shadows by Mercedes Lackey, and this reminds me of that one quite a bit. I actually just discovered an author called R. Cooper, who writes male fantasy, urban fantasy kind of romances. Some of them are a bit more graphic, sex-speaking than others, but I really am loving that author. I think it's a she, hard to know with an initial, but she writes sort of lonely, heart-wrenching characters with a lot of cultural conflict, not understanding each other but finding each other, and I've really been loving that. I've been reaching for a lot of romance recently. It's one of my coping mechanisms is to read romance when I'm feeling a little low. So that's what I've been doing. Will we see Sophronia again in the Parasolverse? Well, I'm hoping if you read the Finishing School books and then reread the Parasol Protectorate books, for example, that you might have spotted Sophronia. She shows up a couple of times. She's never referred to by name, of course, but then she wouldn't be. She may, in fact, show up in some of the novellas as a side character. She's not going to be a main character, I don't think, but I think you will see her. I think you'll see her as a side character once in a while. This fascinator, I think, came from like Ross or something, which is a discount store here, and I just put a clip onto it. People love the idea of a coloring book. All right, well, I'll definitely keep pursuing it. It's on me now, frankly. I think I can probably extract the rights to make it myself, but then I have to find an artist and go through that process. But I have been seriously thinking about it and doing the research into it, so we might do a coloring book. Heather wants to know if I would recommend self-publishing to unpublished authors. It is really, really, really hard to build an audience as a self-published author. I am unbelievably lucky because I have you guys. which is an audience that came to me out of traditional publishing. So I can't speak to starting from scratch because I didn't have to. Thank you for following me and reading me and buying my stuff, because it's how I live now. It's how I eat. To a new author, I don't know. I have a couple of friends who are just starting out as independent publishing their works, and it's really tough. It's hard. You need to be very business minded. You need to be very practical. You need to be willing to kind of put yourself out there and pursue marketing. And there's a lot of writers, and writers are often artists who struggle with that. So I think you need to know yourself as a person to know whether you can really make it. So I don't know. I think going through the process of submitting to agents and submitting to publishers if they have open submissions is good for authors, if only because it gives you an ego beatdown, which, let's be very clear, I had 10 years of. I was 10 years trying to get published before I got published. And it's a tough world, and you're going to get that ego beatdown when you're published, in whatever form. So I think it helps to have it done quietly to you by agents and editors first via rejection letters, and learning to cope with those rejection letters and learning to cope with criticism is good for you. So even if you're going to go the indie path, I would consider trying to get an agent, and just for the experience. But I think it really is a matter of knowing yourself and knowing what you're up against. If you're in the United States, I would very much recommend RWA, which is if you're considering anything to do with romance. It's the Romance Writers Association, and their forums, their online forums, their local chapter groups are really good for this kind of thing, for like sticking your toe into the waters of whether you want to do trad or indie. William wants to know if I've ever thought of a supernatural character that changes gender as part of their transformation. No, I've read a few, and of course, I watched a lot of Ranma 1/2. But no, I've never thought about it. I think it would be fun. My next book has essentially a transgender character. As in the next one, so I hesitate to use that term because she doesn't use that term, but you'll have to wait and read the book to find out. But I haven't really thought about it. I'm not sure how it would work given the rules of my universe, but it might be possible. John wants to know whose name was. Sorry. Oh, R. Cooper was the name of the male author, and Rice Ford was the name of the urban fantasy author. So, if that's what you're asking. Mari has the comment right below. Annika wants to know if there's a chance of seeing more Felix. Yes, I am thinking about writing him a book in the Delightfully Deadly series. So, yeah, there's a chance you'll see more of him. So Katie says she tried telling people about the Parasolverse in terms of vampires and werewolves, and the coworker asks if my books are horror, and no, they're definitely not horror. But hilariously, if you have the very first edition of Soulless, the spine does say horror because everyone was confused about where to put my books. So, hi Dick, hey, hooray! Gil would like to know who can be petitioned for coloring books. Me. I'm in charge of that. And like everything, I'm on a deadline right now through the end of into sort of the end of next month, so through to March. And so kind of my whole worldview is really centered on making that deadline. And then once I have written the rough draft for that, that's not the deadline is not for a rough draft. I then have to do edits and stuff like that on my own. But once I'm kind of done with the rough draft, parts of my brain free up, and then I can go back to doing the coloring book and things like that. So it's me. It's my fault. What character does Sophronia play in the other books? Well, that's always the question with Sophronia. What character is she playing at the moment? This is what happens when you write a spy. So Heather has an interesting comment, which is, she says, not brave enough to submit for publication, let alone self-publishing. And I think that is the way to view it. A lot of people go into self-publishing because they feel like it's easier, or there's going to be less of a sense of rejection or something than traditional publishing. And I actually think it's the other direction. You submit to a traditional publisher and you're kind of going through gateways and trying to impress only one or two people. If you self-publish without that process, you're just signing yourself up for hundreds of tiny little bosses who may not like you. So you've changed over like one or two bosses in the form of an agent and an editor into a whole bunch of reading bosses who might be very, very nasty indeed, and frankly a lot less kind to your ego than an agent or an editor might be. So I do think, Heather, that you actually have the right perspective on it, which some don't. How do I know all the things that I know about the time period? Do I do a lot of research? Yes, I do a lot of research. I morph the time period. I write alternate history, not real. It's not really happening. Sometimes it has real events in it, but it's not really happening. I do, for every hour that I write, I do about an hour's worth of research. I read a lot of primary sources. I read a lot of Wikipedia and history and delve pretty deeply into what's going on at the time period that I'm writing. So I collect images from the times and places that I'm thinking of sending my characters to on Pinterest. I love original photographic evidence because that allows me to use my character's perspective to describe what's being seen, rather than a secondary or even a primary report on another culture from a traveler, for example, is through the lens of their eyes. Whereas if I can see an image from a time period, I can write it through the lens of my character's eyes. So I really love pictures. One of the great things about writing in the 1890s is that photography is much more common now in the time period that I'm writing. Whereas when I was writing the Sophronia books from the 1850s, it was really only daguerreotypes. And then the 1870s, you have a little bit more photographs are more common, but by the 1890s, which are the Prudence books, the Custard Protocol books, there's a lot more photographic evidence. It makes it so much easier for me as a writer. It's one of the reasons that I entertained the idea of moving Rue and her crew outside of England and out into the world, because I knew I had more pictures to pull on. A lot of my knowledge is pretty instinctive. I've always been obsessed with the Victorian era. I've always read a lot about this time period. I've always watched historical videos about it, and adaptations of Gaskell and Austen, which is earlier, but still. So it's just a passion of mine, and that helped. It helped when I set something there that I kind of just knew stuff. I used to recreate, so I used to do historical reenactment as well. William wants to know if I've ever had an editor that's correct something that was intentional. Yeah, it happens. And it is irritating, but then an editor is not me, so they don't know what I mean. So if an editor is correcting something that I've written that I think is intentional and should be obvious, then not always, but sometimes it's my fault. I didn't make it seem intentional, so I need to restructure the sentence often to make it come across properly to my reader. And often the editor is right. So there are different kinds of editors that we deal with as authors. What I think, William, you're referring to is a developmental editor. That's the editor when as a traditionally published author, I say my editor at Orbit. I am talking about my developmental editor. The developmental editor works with me on sort of the arc of the story, the voice, the way the characters are written, the way the scenes are structured. They're not looking for typos or any tiny details like that. That's a copy editor. So, and to have a good working relationship with your developmental editor is pretty vital for an author. I have been really, really lucky. I've had 3 developmental editors at this juncture with traditional publishing, and they have all been excellent. I also work with a developmental editor for my independent stuff, and I hired her. So there's a different dynamic there. she is a romance developmental editor, and I specifically went for someone who is accustomed to working with romance because my novellas are a little bit more romantic. They're more in the romance genre. So I wanted somebody who was accustomed to working with that. But because of the dichotomy of our relationship, I'm a more experienced writer than she is as an editor. I'm a little, and because I have hired her, I'm a little bit more, I don't know, I don't take her advice as easily as I did my traditional editors originally. But I still am very interested in what she has to say, and she is still really, really good at spotting things that I just can't spot because I'm too invested in the story. So when Sue tells me that like the first scene is not working, she's right. It's not working, but it takes someone else to tell me that for me to realize it. And sometimes what a developmental editor does is just say, you know, this scene here seems out of place to me, or seems out of character, and I think you need to remove it or rewrite it. But it's up to me as the author to realize that no, actually, it's that the dialogue is wrong or something else. Like sometimes they are picking up on a flaw and then identifying what they think is the flaw, and that's not right. But the fact that they picked up on the flaw is right. And so it's up to me, and it's my job to figure out why it's not right. And that can be the real struggle. Anne just wants to know how much Kim Newman has inspired me, and apparently not at all, because I don't know who that is. Yes, I am wearing a teapot necklace. It was a gift from a reader. Let me see the teapot necklace. There it is. Melinda wants to know if after this video I'm transitioning to tea and writing. Yes, I am. It's pretty cold in my office, so I might go home to write where there's central heating. Or I might stay here. But yeah, I'm going to go back to writing Competence. Katie's off. Bye, Katie. Recommendation for To Say Nothing of the Dog, which is Connie Willis. I haven't read it yet, but I hear it's amazing. And she's supposed to be really, really funny. Elizabeth wants to know if I will post this video when I'm done. Yes, I will post this video when I am done, so that anybody can go finish watching it. And yes, I always do that. I also try to post them to YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. You can go over and check that out where all of the videos also show up, because that way everybody can see them any way they want. But yes, I occasionally will drop a spoiler video on the Parasol vs. Spoiler Squee group. And those videos I usually delete because that's the whole joy of a spoilerific conversation. I think everything's recording fine. We are nearing in on an hour though, so are there any final questions? If not, I'm gonna sign off and let you guys go play with the rest of your evenings or days or whatever time zone you're in. John wants to know if I would watch the Steven universe. Nope. Also have no idea what that is. I am embarrassingly out of touch with contemporary fandom in terms of visual medias. I don't watch a lot of television, and I barely make it to like 2 movies a year. I'd rather read, frankly. I'd always rather read. So one last time for everybody. The code word, if you'd like to enter to win copies of Imprudence in trade, is tea, as in the tea that you drink. You can go ahead and enter above. And good night from Scotland. Good night from California. Oh, Rune wants to know if there are more lesbian couples coming. Of course there are more lesbian couples coming. What, you doubted me? More lesbians than gay. In fact, I might be dubbing 2017 the year of the gays for me, because I have two stories coming out this year, and both of them feature gay characters. And of course, I'm writing Competence right now, and there are lesbians in that book. So, yay! One last question from Annika, who wants to know if my books fit into new adult. Yes, I think Custard Protocol could qualify as new adult, but it's not up to me where they stick it in marketing. So, goodbye, everybody. I'm going to go off and write.
I will see you all next time.